Welcome back. We were talking about the impact of illegal immigration on the workforce here in the United States of America and how that's become a hot button item, and in many regards it's stayed a hot button item over the years. Kristen Schneck, you said you wanted to say something in regards to some of these numbers that come out when it starts pitting different groups of poor people in some of these larger environments, some of these larger urban areas against each other when it comes to jobs.
Well, I know here in Pittsburgh that there's a lot of efforts by the unions to try to bring illegal workers into the fold. There's a lot of cooperation. I know of a case in Greentree where LACLU, the Latino-American and Caribbean Union, was helping some illegal immigrants with wage garnishment cases where they weren't being paid for three weeks of work. I think there's a lot more commonalities than what people think, and there's you know, like the immigration system, which is broken, there are ways that, you know, all these groups can come together.
No, and I'm not saying that people should be taken advantage of, but even when you say, for example, here in Pittsburgh, when we were talking about Chicago during the commercial break, when you say that there are groups trying to help illegal immigrants find jobs in Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh has the lowest level of diversity in the workforce of its benchmark cities in the United States. And the conditions of some American citizens in Pittsburgh is some of the worst across the board in the United States. I've mentioned the south side of Chicago, where illegal immigrants can get $17 an hour under the table for construction jobs that black laborers have been out of work for years on the south side of Chicago, where they make up anywhere from 90 into some neighborhoods 100% of the population. That, Carl, seems to be part of the rub. So when people see folks coming over the border looking for work, they can understand why they're coming over. But now if they're competing against Americans, particularly poor Americans in this economy, there's a reason why there's corruption all over the place and there's a lot of animosity all over the place.
And yet I think we're also talking about a lot of different issues. When you talk about African Americans who have to confront institutional racism and racism throughout the larger society, that's a different problem than illegal immigration, undocumented immigration. The lack of enforcement in wage in earnings and taxes, that's a state problem. That's not necessarily one that's caused by undocumented immigration. It's exploited. It's how they're exploited. The way I would look at it is taking a larger look at how the American people think about it right now. The American people are kind of all over the place, but more than half of the American people, if you look at the latest polls, think that there should be a path to citizenship for undocumented people, that they should join in as part of the American group and have both the rights and responsibilities of other Americans. I think the vast majority of the people who want to remain here, those who have come here in an undocumented status, want the same thing. They also want to make amends for breaking the law, and they also want to join that American dream like everybody else. I think we as a country can figure out a lot of these problems, but we can't pit each other we can't pit other Americans against people, even people who don't have.
But doesn't go ahead, Micah.
Let me just direct a question your way. Eventually this is going to come down to amnesty or the path to citizenship. So if I was to offer a compromise for citizens out there that feel jibbed or scammed or just hurt over the fact that they're coming in, if we look over history, Japanese internment camps, no one's proud of that. You know, throwing people and citizens in jail, no one's proud of that. What was the Chinese Exclusionary Act? Nobody's going to stand on the soapbox saying I supported that back in the day. America loves being generous. That's what makes us Americans. I think at that point, we need to recognize that illegals are taking advantage of a broken system. But as the generous people we are, if we gave them amnesty right up front, there'd be a lot of hurt feelings. But at the same time, they're no longer taking taxes, or they're no longer taking wages under the table. They're paying taxes. Would it be okay if I was to say, let's just make the 30 or the 11 million, illegal immigrants here legal? Let's just do that. And can I do like a 5-year payback of, $6,000 per person or something like that? Is there a way we could say full rights but a fine, or full rights except the right to vote until you're here an additional 5 years? Can we make a compromise?
I mean,
like
I think that's what people are trying to do in Congress. But here's the problem: number one, you have people that are going through the naturalized process that are in line. Now you've gypped them because you've basically broken the law and you've skipped people in line. Number one.
Yeah, but this is one of the problems. Is there a line? Is there really a line?
Yeah, is there? I like what you say, because with 11 million illegals, at this point we have to admit that
Somebody's going through,
well,
but somebody's going through the naturalization process right now.
There are.
Somebody's
And
going through the visa process.
But if you're a
Somebody's going through the green
low-skilled,
card
if you are a
process.
low-skilled or unskilled worker, and there are jobs here waiting for you, there is no line for you.
Just come on over.
But that also still goes to, if you're talking about low-skilled jobs, because again, I go back to some of the jobs that illegals are in right now. These are not, construction jobs are not low-skilled jobs. Those are jobs that you can buy a new car with. Those are jobs you can buy a house with. Those are jobs you can sustain a family with. So we're not talking about every job as somebody picking an orange off of a tree. I think that's a stereotype.
And there are visas for that. There are plenty of visas.
And there
for
are
that.
still a lot of illegal immigrants that are here for that as well. And there are people taking advantage of that. I know, Kristen, you're well aware of that.
Let's talk.
Correct, but I also wanted to bring up, there is a line, just to correct what was said, there is a long line. If you're from China, India, Mexico, and you've applied for an employment-based visa, there is a long line.
Yeah.
And I think that needs to be taken in, but I think there have been proposals in the past, part of Obama's executive action, one of the points back in November was to clear the backlogs of the visa waits. And I think, there is a way to do that, and then there is a way to have people, pay fines, pay their back taxes. I think, one of the good points would be to go back and pay so many years of back taxes. And a lot of people are willing to do that. They say, okay, where do I sign the line? How do I get started?
Here's an intro. Oh, sorry.
Well, I think the danger in the policies is that what people will say is we don't want to incentivize that behavior. We want to say, okay, we'll amnesty everybody now because
And how many times do you do that? We've already done this in 1986. Do you do it again? And this is something that we'll do just every other generation. We're going to have an amnesty policy that comes into place. So we won't break the law for 5 years, and then we'll reopen the border, if you will, allow this to become a situation once again. Because Ronald Reagan was a staunch conservative that ended up compromising on this in 1986 as a second-term president, and this was supposed to be the okay, we'll do amnesty, no more after this.
I will say that cycle will end once the benefits of illegal immigration actually start not to outweigh the costs. And I know that was a little complicated, but I did it for a reason, and that is, if something is hurting you a little bit, but also benefiting you greatly, so you take a bad-tasting medicine, but you end up feeling better later, it's going to keep going. I believe that's actually what illegal immigration is. It has a bad taste, it's a sour taste up front, but in the long run, it's not actually dragging the economy down the way people want you to think it is.
But Micah,
a lot of times it's holding it up. But
Micah,
if we go through this one or two more times to the point where the jobs aren't actually there, there is no incentive to come to the United States, and we are at maximum capacity, that's when people say, across the board, we're shutting this border down.
Michael, but what you're saying is, you're saying that we're not at maximum capacity. There's a benefit for the illegal immigrants at a time.
No,
where
and American citizens.
But at the same exact
involved.
time, we're saying this at a point in time where the workforce participation rate is at its lowest since the late 1970s. So there's a lot of people that are saying, no, we can't take any more economic competition right now.
But that's you just pulled a number and you
No,
forgot,
that's not.
No, I'm saying you pulled a number, but you didn't mention that unemployment's also at the lowest rate that it's been in a while.
And the unemployment.
I'm saying there's lots of numbers we could pull
and the fact that we're an aging population.
And let me put it this way. I've got a couple.
Let me go to break.
Oh, okay.
Let me go to break. We'll continue this conversation when we come back. Everybody's throwing numbers around. This is getting good. Come back in just a second.
Come back.